Exodus 17 and verse 13, and I always love King James because it says, and Joshua discomforted Amalek, which really means he took away his remote control, his comfy chair, right? The refrigerator went out. He just discomforted them then, So I think that it might be a little bit more intense than that in Exodus 17:13, with Joshua discomforted them by removing them from their heads. So he discomforted Amalek and his people because he used the edge of the sword. And the Lord said unto Moses, write this for memorial in a book, rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, because they're going to be talking about it 1,500 years later in Colorado Springs. For I will utterly put out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses then decided to build an altar, and he called the name of it Jehovah Nissi. Jehovah Nissi. The Lord is my banner. And the banner, it's a standard, it's an insignia, it's a rallying cry. It was later used, it's designed as God as our covering. God covers us completely. God is on top of us, protecting us, that nothing can touch us. Many of you are probably familiar with many baseball stadiums. And in many of the stadiums in the north, they put roofs on them because in April it has a tendency to snow and rain and have inclement weather. Well, they got the point in the south, in Arizona and Miami, that it's way too hot to play baseball down there too. So they put roofs that covered the stadium because of the intense heat. So I guess, Tennessee, North Carolina is probably the best place to be then on that, so you don't have to build a stadium with a roof on it. But the point is here is God our roof. God is our canopy. God is our banner. God is on top of everything, keeping everybody inside safe from the elements. However, if you were in Toronto recently, they never have a rain out, but they had a whole bunch of icicles on a huge building next door that basically broke loose and came through the roof of the Toronto Dome and canceled the game, which was great because they were mocking everybody about how we never canceled, and that happened the next day. Canadians, So stick to hockey, will you guys? Okay, so basically, the Lord is our covering. He covers us completely. He is over the top protecting us that nothing can touch us. Later on in the time of the Gospels, it was utilized for when, here, if you want to stand up, you two. When the bride and the bridegroom get married, okay, this is Exhibit A, all right, they're in one part doing the ceremony. Don't me escape Padres number for all you Catholics. Okay, maybe you guys would get that one. Okay, so basically then, when it's done, a number of people, well, probably 4, would hold poles with this giant canopy over them, indicative of God's protection. Go ahead, you can be seated. Over God's protection as they go from where the ceremony was done up to where the food's going to be, to the banquet hall. So all the way there, they were covered with God's blessing, that God would take care of them. God's presence was with them as they strode all the way up there. So that later is what it comes down to. However, good thing you're here, because we're going to look at the word Nissi a little bit, and we're going to find a little bit more depth as to why would you call your altar the Lord is my banner? Why is this, 20 to 25 foot altar, 15 feet deep, 3 to 4 feet high? If you're in Exodus class, I'll show you a picture of it. It's out in the middle of a field, big area where 2 plus 2.5 million people can see it. By the way, I'm teaching Exodus next week in the Chicagoland area, so you're going to get a heavy dose of this because it all ties in together with this. I'll even do a quick summary here shortly. So why is this altar called Jehovah Nissi? Well, it's very simple. The context. Read the next verse. Verse 16. For he said, because the Lord has sworn that the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. Why was that important to Israel? Who were these people? They were slaves. Now, Anna, you work in a prison. And the prisoners, you teach them self-defense, right? You give them weapons to protect themselves, right? While they're in the prison. They're slaves in the prison. They can't do anything, right? So you make sure that they understand self-defense so they can beat up the guards. They're taskmasters. You make sure that they have weapons so that they can attack. No, it's not. You don't do that unless you want a real rebellion on your hand. So what do these people who have been slaves for a long time know? They're not MMA qualified, are they? No, they're not. They're not even hockey player qualified, are they? No. So when they discomforted Amalek, it was a big deal to them. Look at Exodus 13. Let's set the lead into this. Because in Exodus 13:17, okay, you're free to go. All you slaves, get out of here. You're gone. Now, where do we go? Well, we're following God's lead. 13:17 says, God's pretty smart. We already know that because of the Bible. 13:17 says, and it came to pass when Pharaoh had let the people go, that God led them not through the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, lest peradventure the people repent when they see war and they return to Egypt. God already knew they weren't warriors. They weren't trained. They could make some great bricks, but that wasn't really needed, when you're running away making bricks. They could even make them without straw. But they were leaving, and if they would have gotten in their cars and driven, they would have been there, 3 or 4 hours if they had the taxi cab driver we had when we were going through the Sinai. Wouldn't take long at all to shoot right on up there to the, you go through Gaza, and there you are in Israel, no problem. But they would see other people's land because other people were living there. Now, we throw around the figure of 2 to 2.5 million people. We get that because it talks about there were 600,000 military-aged people that left. So those 600,000 military-aged people were also old enough to have wives and probably old enough then to have these little things called children. Not dogs, children. Okay, so we have 600,000 men, wives, children, 2 to 2.5 million people. That's where that comes from. So that's still a lot of people that you got to take in mind if you're going to attack them. Now, would you let 2 to 2.5 million people come right through your yard? Tom, you got a big enough yard. Can they just come on through and just, take... I did that last week. One guy. How about 2.5 million of them? With a 4-wheel drive truck. Well, sorry, we're just bringing our cattle, we're bringing our sheep, we're bringing, our carts and all of that. And by the way, we need water, and we're probably going to see if we can find some food from you. So would you let them through your yard? Willingly? No, you wouldn't. So what would you have to do to stop them? Put up a toll booth? No, that really doesn't work. So you would have to basically fight with them. Well, these guys aren't professional fighters. So when it started, they would turn around and go, bye, we're going back to Egypt. We got fed pretty good there. Yeah, we were slaves, but so what? So God knows that they would have trouble seeing war, dealing with other nations. Exodus 14. 26. Exodus 14:26, and the Lord said unto Moses, we're now at the Red Sea, and they're kind of going, we're stuck on this beach, and we don't have surfboards. What are we going to do? The Lord said unto Moses, stretch out your hand over the sea, and the waters are going to come again upon the Egyptians, and it's going to go on their chariots, it's going to go on their horsemen. And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, because all of Israel was already in Saudi Arabia. They were in the land of Midian. And the sea returned to the strength when the morning appeared. The Egyptians fled against it, and the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. Who did it? The Lord overthrew the Egyptians. Did they have to fight? No. In fact, Moses had told them before, shut up, quit complaining, I will take care of them. And he did. All they had to do was get from this side to that side and bring everybody with you. And once you get there, we'll take care of it. And God did. He overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea, and the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen and all the host of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them, there remained not so much as one of them. Does that mean Yul Brynner died too? Yes, it does mean that. That's from the original 10 Commandments in the late 50s for you guys who are wondering. He was Pharaoh. And in the next scene is he's back in Egypt by himself with his, sorry, Pharaoh got it too. But the children of Israel walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall unto them on the right hand and on the left. They probably froze in place. In fact, been working this some more, and I think that going through sand on that sandbar that had just happened to be there would have been very difficult with wagons and all that. That area probably froze too, but it wouldn't have been slick. It would have been more like concrete. And would have been real easy then to roll your carts across that whole section too. So they got across to the other side because of frozen water. You're going across, and here's Aaron stopping and go, look, I know that fish. Can I get that other fish? As you're going across there. And it was wide enough to put 50 people abreast as they crossed, so they could cross at least 50 at a time. So it wouldn't take that long to get across, and they were probably there 3 days. But anyway, that's for next weekend. So let's continue here. So we're, the Lord then, verse 30, thus the Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the sea. And Israel saw that great work which the Lord did upon the Egyptians, and the people feared the Lord and believed the Lord and his servant Moses. That's not going to last very long, but at this point, they physically said, this is my taskmaster. This is my enemy. These are people who want to kill me, because it's going to say that in Psalms here in a little bit. And guess what? They're dead. So, if you've ever been involved in a chariot race, one of the things you do with your weapons is you can't let them go flying all over the place. You tie them on you. So what happens when the dead Egyptian would rise up? Their military weapons would be still attached to them. So what would you do if you didn't have a weapon? You would get a weapon. So that was one of the things they did to get weaponry, was right then when they all came up. So they had to get their weapons and arm themselves because, again, they were slaves. Slaves don't have weapons. So now they saw the greatest enemy, the greatest army, the Egyptians, dead. Did that help them as we head forward to being the Lord our banner? Yes, because now the Amalekites are going to attack here shortly. But let's read 15:1 because it's time for, as Taylor Dykstra said one time, dance party. So here we are. We're going to have a dance party. 15:1. Then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song unto the Lord, and spake, saying, and I never really paid much attention until I realized that a great fear was other nations of the children of Israel, because they weren't trained in warfare. They were trained as accountants. They couldn't fight. So look at what are they going to deal with. I will sing unto the Lord, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea. So what we were dealing with, the dead Egyptians. The Lord is my strength and my song, and he has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will prepare him a habitation, my father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. What were they concerned about? What we opened with? They were concerned about the Amalekites. And God being a God of war is what they're seeing here. And he destroyed the enemy. Oh, doesn't this come back to what Moses? I will be what I will be. I will become what I need to be. Whatever you need me to be. Right now, I'm going to be a man of war. I'm going to take out the enemy. And here's what he was. And was that loving? Absolutely. He protected his people. He took care of his people. He needed to do that. Self-defense here. Because if God didn't do anything, we wouldn't be reading this right now. Because there would have been no Messiah. So, all right. Let's jump down to verse 8. And in verse 9, rather. Verse 9 says, the enemy said, I will pursue. The enemy said, I will overtake. The enemy said, I will divide the spoil. The enemy said, my lust shall be satisfied upon them. Well, we just had a bunch of plagues and their oldest died. I will draw my sword, my hand shall destroy them. Now, does that sound like somebody just going to walk up and let's be friends? No, that's what was in the minds of the Egyptians. And thou didst blow with thy wind, the sea covered them. They sank as lead in the mighty waters. Who was like unto thee, O Lord, among the gods? Remember all these Egyptian gods that you kicked their butt? O Lord, you are so great compared to those gods. Who was like thee, glorious in holiness, fearful in praises, doing wonders? Thou stretchest out thy right hand, and the earth swallowed them. Thou in thy mercy hast led forth the people which thou hast redeemed. Thou hast guided them in thy strength unto thy holy habitation. The people shall hear. Other people now, other nations are going to hear about what you did to Egypt. And sorrow shall take hold. Wait a minute. The people shall hear and be afraid. Sorrow shall take hold on the inhabitants of Philistia, not Palestina. And even the dukes of Hazard are going to be amazed. Oh, sorry, dukes of Edom. They're going to be amazed. And the mighty men of Moab, trembling shall take hold upon them, and even the inhabitants of Canaan shall melt away. Guess whose lands they're going to be going through soon? Edom, Moab, Canaan's living in their land. They're all going to hear about what God did to the Egyptians, and then they're going to be afraid. Have you ever fought an enemy that's afraid? That's part of why Mike Tyson won so many times. Then he finally ran into a Christian who wasn't afraid of him, and it was a whole different thing. So that's what they were concerned about. In this song, it gives us a great insight into the fear that they had to deal with what they were doing, but also they're realizing that God's fighting for them, and all the nations are going to be afraid of them. In fact, 40 years later, when they go back into the promised land, and they send the 2 spies in there, what happens? We know what your God did to the Egyptians 40 years ago. God's people didn't always believe it, but the enemies did exactly what's here. They were still afraid of what the God of Egypt did for his people. The God of Israel did to the Egyptians for his people. See, 16, fear and dread shall fall upon them. By the greatness of thine arm, they shall be as still as a stone. Till thy people pass over, O Lord, till the people pass over which thou hast purchased. Thou shalt bring them in and plant them in the mountain of thine inheritance, in the place, O Lord, which thou hast made for thee to dwell in the sanctuary, O Lord, which thy hands have established. The Lord shall reign forever and ever. That's a great song, and they're dancing, and they got the tambourine, and Marion's leading them, and the guys are collecting weapons, and they're just, everything's wonderful, everything's great. The enemy's dead. Everybody's going to be afraid. We won, right? They're going to be dancing and all of that. It's just going to be a great time, right? Some of us white people got rhythm, but not me. Okay. Now, we don't have time to do all of this, so I will give you a quick overview. It's probably not going to be too quick, but let me review. You are a slave. You had heard about this God of Abraham who did all these great things for Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Somehow you ended up being a slave. And so what did you do? You complained mightily to God, right? Hey, I hear these stories. Are they real or aren't they? In fact, your whole nation's complaining to God. So what does God do? He sends the brother of one of your oldest elders. Aaron's brother shows up out of nowhere and says, he's on a mission from God. God sent me to redeem you people, to get you out of here. And they went, yeah, all right, good. The slave thing is getting kind of old. And so he throws down, his staff and it becomes a snake, and he shows them some tricks, all these different things. Hey, all right, great. We're going to leave. Put the house up for sale. We're leaving. And of course, things didn't quite go as quick as they would have liked, and they turned on Moses and all that, but Moses was employed by God. So to make things shorter, we got a bunch of plagues then that happened, and finally they went, you know what? Get out of here after the last plague called the Passover, where the children of Israel ate and they got healed, right? They ate wholeness of themselves. They got everything together. And not only do they get to leave, excuse me, but I really like that ring. I've been admiring that ring for a long time, and I love those golden earrings and everything else. So they spoiled the Egyptians. They not only left, they took all the wealth of Egypt with them because the Egyptians gave it to them. So here, please, get out of here, leave, go. I'm tired of getting everything happening. I have nothing left, and my oldest is dead, so this is terrible. So they took off. They left, and you can just see all of a sudden, we're free. We really are. We're free. Let's go. Where are we going? Oh, look, a pillar of fire. Follow that. Oh, it's nighttime. What do we need? Actually, excuse me, that's the nighttime. And during the day, we got a pillar of cloud. And if you've ever been in that area, it's really hot, and you could really need some air conditioning, like a pillar of cloud during the daytime, and a pillar of fire because you're in the desert at nighttime to keep you warm. And they could move it day and night, and they did, and they headed out. Let's go. And about 200 miles later, they end up at the Red Sea. Now, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but you get to the Red Sea, and you're stuck. You go into this wadi, you can't get out, you end up on this beach, and there is nowhere to go. Except, how many of you can swim? Outside of Andrew, how many of you can make 8 miles across? Okay, so they naturally, as we have found out, they complained. They complained very loudly. You just brought us out here to kill us because there wasn't enough grave sites anymore. Egypt was filled, so you just brought them out here to kill us. And again, God said, told Moses, I'll deal with them. They don't know how to fight. I'll take care of this one. Right? Opens up. They go through. They all died, the Egyptians. They do a dance party. They gather weapons. Then it's time to move on again. 3 days later, we get to this section, and all they find is Meribah, which means bitter water. You ever look forward to drinking or eating something because you know it's going to be good, and it's bitter, it's not good at all? Kind of how Jerry looked at every taco place around there. It's just not Cuban food type thing. So basically, they got to the point then, and so God says, Moses, but this particular, use these kind of spices, a little sriracha here and a little thing here, and then boom, the water's good, everybody drinks, everybody's happy again, and let's continue moving. Now they're traveling in the wadis so that the people, the nations around there don't really know their progress and where they're going and all of that. And as they go through it, they get to another place called Rephidim, and when they get there, they don't have any water again. But in the meantime, just before they got to Rephidim, they started complaining rather loudly that, this food that we took with us, it's all gone. And I haven't been able to see an open Walmart. I can't even find a Starbucks. There's not even a Taco Bell out here in the desert because God had them all closed. No, they weren't there. There was nothing out there to start with. You're in the desert. There's nothing there. Right? You go into the wilderness, you go hunting in the wilderness. It's in the wilderness. You don't expect to find Starbucks out there. Not anymore. Subways maybe, but there's nothing there. So they, instead of being, Moses, would you please talk to God because we're kind of getting a little hungry. It'd be really nice to see what God's got in store for us because we know God takes care of all our need. Is that how they did it? No. They complained bitterly and loudly to Moses. So God said, all right, got this one handled. Tomorrow morning, you're going to have manna. And of course, the definition of manna is, what is it? So when they got up in the morning, they looked out there and they went, what is it? And it was called manna because that's what manna means. But manna, I always think of it as baklava. Because when you hear it described, it's a coriander seed, it's the color of bdellium, which is kind of a light brown, and it's very tasty, very nourishing. Get as much as you want. In fact, we can exchange recipes. There's manna cookbooks that will happen and all these other things that are all going to be there for us soon. So we have a great, wonderful food, and God charged them every day for it, right? No! Every morning you go out and pick as much as you would like or as little as you would like, and it doesn't cost you anything. And it kept you healthy in the desert. So God gave them food. Then they move on to Rephidim, and there's no water. So again, they were very polite, very kind to Moses. No, Rephidim, and here's how God handled that one. You see that big rock over there? It's 200 feet in the air. Go up next to that rock, hit that rock, and I'm going to bring water out. But you tell them about what a great God I am first. basically. And you got 2.5 million people. So you got to do this in a position where everybody knows where it's coming from. So that's what they do. Moses goes up to this huge rock. He bangs on it. Water comes out everywhere, but he taught them first about the Christ, about God taking care of them, all these things. Now you want water, here's your water. And there's evidence there where tons of water flowed down to all the people that were there with the children of Israel. Now, let me ask you a question. You're an Amalekite. You live in the desert. What's the number one thing you'd like to find in the desert? Water. Guess what? Water has just mysteriously appeared all over the place. Now you understand why the Amalekites came. They came to fight for the water. We want water. You're on our land. We want our water rights. You work for the water department. People fight over water rights all the time. Have been for years. Right? The sheep people versus the cow people. They had major battles out west here over water, which takes us back to where we started, Exodus 17. So in Exodus 17 again, we pick it up in 13 again, and we just reread what we read earlier. Joshua discomforted Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. And 17:14, and the Lord said to Moses, write this for memorial in a book. Write it down so other people will be able to read about it later, like we're doing today. And rehearse it in the ears of Joshua. For I will utterly put out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses built an altar, called the name of this altar, the Lord is my banner. The Lord is my football team. The Lord is my insignia. The Lord is my standard. The Lord is what I'm going to live by. That's all part of being the banner. For, he said, because the Lord has sworn it, the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. They won't get too big and harass you any longer. Now, let me give you all, that was 13, 14, 15, and 16. Now, we're going to move to Numbers 21, but let me give you all the different ways that this word Nissi is translated. He tells Moses, write it in a book, build an altar of thanksgiving, and call this altar of thanksgiving, Jehovah is my covering, or Jehovah is my banner, Jehovah is my standard, Jehovah is my insignia, my ensign, my canopy, Jehovah is my rallying cry. My standard, my rallying point is in the name of this altar that I'm building before you. Many people wear banners of their favorite teams, right? We just had the Masters. And so Aaron's walking around with a new Masters hat. Numbers 21, I want to show you some other places where Nissi is translated in light of all of this, because it's like he put like Moses went up to the rock where everybody could see. That's what we're going to be dealing with a number of these other places where this is used. Numbers 21, verse 5. And the people spoke against God and against Moses. Oh, this is a rare occasion. Wherefore have you brought us out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there's no bread, neither is there any water, and our soul is getting tired of this manna, this light bread that's nourishing, healthy, very useful, can do all kinds of things with, tasty, free. We're getting tired of this. You can only eat pizza for so many days, right? All right. And so, because they complained, now here's a lesson. Before the law was given, God kind of winked at a lot of things. But once the law was given, God said, if you start doing these things, there's hell to pay. You're going to be held responsible for your unbelief. So now these people are complaining to God, and they're going to, the law's already in place. God's already laid it out. So you want to complain about me? You want to complain about Moses? Verse 6, and the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and much people of Israel died, over 14,000 of them. Therefore the people came to Moses and said, excuse me, we have sinned. We've sinned. You should have thought of that before. We have sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord, and we spoke against the Lord's representative, you. So would you please pray unto the Lord, and he take away the serpents from us? And Moses just laughed at them and said, I'll get back to you. No, Moses prayed for the people, and the Lord said unto Moses, make thee a fiery serpent and set it upon a Nissi. Set it upon a pole. Set it upon a banner. Set it upon something where all the people can see, and that they know it's from me, the true God. It's got to get up high enough so all the sick people who can see it, it's got to be waving out there so everybody can recognize there's something there. Set it upon a pole. Set it upon a Nissi. Set it upon a banner that represents me so the people can see it. So when they see it, it shall come to pass that everyone that's bitten, when they just, all they got to do is look upon it, they're going to live. Wouldn't that be nice in the hospitals? You just can walk in and go, all you got to do is look upon this chart. You're healed. No surgery for you today. All right, well, we're in a lot of hospitals out there. They're going to live. So what did Moses do? Moses made a serpent of brass and put it upon a Nissi. And it came to pass that if a serpent had bitten any man, when he beheld the serpent of brass, he lived. Very simple. But you can see the banner, the insignia. This is God's representation. This is God over the top taking care of us. This is God covering. All you got to do is look at it. You're healed. Look at Numbers 26. Joey, you'll find this one interesting, I think. Numbers 26:1. Joey Seed, based upon a conversation we had. Numbers 26:1. And it came to pass after the plague, this is another plague, that the Lord spake unto Moses and unto Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, saying. Now, who's the priest here now? Eleazar. This is as we're after the 40 years, they're heading in the 40th year towards the promised land. This is not the children that didn't go in. This is their children. And we're going to see that they're much kinder, much gentle, much caring, and think God's just the greatest. They're not going to be at all like their parents. Okay, let's see what happens. You already know there's a plague, so that kind of tells us that. So here's what we're going to do. Moses said unto Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, take the sum of all the congregation of the children of Israel, from 20 years old and upward, throughout their father's house, all that were able to go to war in Israel. So here he's telling them, we want to find out how many warriors we have. Anybody 20 years and older, they're ready to get drafted. They're going to head to Vietnam. So we need to know how many we got so that they're able to go to war. That's how many people that are available. So is there something wrong with the census? Not here, because God told Moses to do it. And they did. Now, verse 9 is part of the census. The sons of Eliab, Nemuel, Dathan, and Abiram. Oh yes, by the way, this is that Dathan and Abiram which were famous in the congregation. They were famous because they strove against Moses and Aaron in the company of Korah when they strove against the Lord, and here's what happened to them. The earth opened her mouth and swallowed them up, along with Korah. When the company died, what time the fire devoured 250 men, and they became a Nissi. They became a sign. These famous people became a banner, became a sign of what not to do because of what they did. Now, verse 11 is real interesting. Notwithstanding the children of Korah died not. Okay, let's look at this record. It happened in Numbers 16. Now, these people are famous for this. We're 40 years after this happened, and they're talking about it. This is famous. Everybody knows it, and it's utilized as a sign. In the New Testament, we read about Sodom and Gomorrah being used as a sign for evil. It talked about, it would be better for people in Sodom and Gomorrah than those in Troas who rejected Christ. So there are times when God will utilize events that happen to remind us. I mean, if you mention Sodom and Gomorrah, most people have a clue that that wasn't good. Even unbelievers know. You know, like Moses, people are familiar with Moses. They're familiar with Sodom and Gomorrah. They don't take it literally, which they should, but they're familiar with it. So Numbers 16, verse 23. Numbers 16, 23. The whole record is great, but we only have time for a short amount because we have to get home for chicken dinner. 16:23 says, and the Lord, Numbers 16:23, the Lord spake unto Moses, speak unto the congregation, get up and get you up from about the tabernacle of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, And Moses rose up and went to Dathan and Abiram, and the elders of Israel followed him. And he spake unto the congregation and said, Depart, I pray you, from the tents of these wicked men, touch nothing of theirs, lest ye be consumed in all their sins. You know, you can't just get up and grab, hey, that's a nice gold coffee mug you got. Yeah, I'll just take that. You're not going to need it in a moment. No, he says, don't take anything. Don't take anything. And they got up from the tabernacle of Korah, Dathan and Abiram on every side, and Dathan and Abiram came out, and they stood in the door of their tents with their wives, with their sons, and with their children. Now, we just read that there's still some children left of these people, and I'll explain in a moment. And Moses said, all right, everybody, listen up. Hereby you're going to know that the Lord has sent me to do all these works, for I have not done them of my own mind. Gee, who else has said that? Jesus. Right? I'm not doing this because I want to do this. Life was great. You think I want to be out here in the wilderness with all you guys? I'm not doing this because of my own mind. Now, if these men here die the common death of all men, or if they be visited after the visitation of all men, then the Lord has not sent me. If they live after what I'm about to say, then I'm not doing God's will. But if the Lord make a new thing, and the earth open her mouth, and if the earth swallow them up, and all that appertain unto them, you know, their tents, their cars, their boats, everything, and they go down quick into the pit, then you shall understand that these men have provoked the Lord. And it came to pass, as soon as he made an end of speaking all these words, that the ground clave asunder that was under them, and the earth opened her mouth, and swallowed them up, and their houses, and all the men that appertained unto Korah, and all their goods. They and all that appertained to them went down alive into the pit, and then the earth closed upon them, and they perished from among the congregation. And all Israel that were round about them, they fled at the cry of them. And they said, lest the earth swallow us up also, get out of here. And there came out a fire from the Lord, and it consumed the 250 men that offered incense. Ah, the old days. Justice was swift. The age of grace, that's okay. It's probably a good thing, because some of us probably deserved this before, back in the day. So these people became famous for a Nissi, for a sign, for a rallying cry for those who are doing the will of God. For us today, because it was written in a Memorial Day, to understand what happened to those people. Let's go to Psalm 83. So those people were famous. They became a rallying cry of what happens to evil people. Psalm 83. Now, why were some of their children still left alive? Because there's two things in the Mosaic Law. One is, it talks about how the children of the sinner, it will go to their third and fourth generation. And one of the reasons for that isn't because of God being mad at the children. It's because if all the evil came on them right away, they would all die. It had to be spread out over 3 or 4 generations. Second thing, it also says that the children are not responsible for the sins of the parents. So the parents were evil, but some of the children weren't, so they were spared. So those are all parts of the law. So Psalm 83, verse 1. Psalm 83, verse 1, and we read, keep not thy silence. Silence. Keep not thy silence, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thy enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up thy head. Now, this is a psalm of Asaph in the time of David, and they were still having problem with other nations. They have said, this is what the enemy would like to do. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. There is a conspiracy among them to go after Israel. Okay? And we were going to read the whole thing, but we don't have time. So I cut it down to just going to verse 16. And we read Asaph going, God, fill their faces with shame, that they may seek thy name, O Lord. Let them be confounded and troubled forever. yea, let them be put to shame and perish, that men may know that thou, whose name alone is Jehovah, art the most high over all the earth. Jehovah is the most high over the earth. He is. And this is the psalm. These guys are coming against us. Maybe if we can teach them the love of God, and if they can understand who Jehovah is, he's the true God, Jehovah the most high over all the earth, they will change. Let's go to Psalm 106. Speaking of Moses, Psalm 106:7. Psalm 106:7 says, our fathers understood not the wonders in Egypt. They remembered not the multitude of thy mercies, but they provoked Jehovah at the sea, at the Red Sea. Nevertheless, God saved them for his name's sake. They're his people. He saved them for his sake. Why? That he might make known his mighty power to them. That he might make his mighty power to be known. And they saw it, but that didn't keep them from complaining and other things that happened. If you look at Psalm 105:42, for God remembered his holy promise and Abraham his servant. That was why he let the children of Israel, why he went and got them, because he remembered his promise to Abraham. Because of his promise to Abraham, he went and saved Abraham's descendants out of Egypt. He remembered his promise to Abraham his servant, and he brought forth his people with joy and his chosen with gladness. And they reciprocated in kind. No, they didn't. But God brought forth his people with joy. It was a joy and gladness for God to rescue his people. Do you think he still gets that today with all of us? Yes. Yes. He gave them the lands of the heathen. That was something Joy talked about, how, hey, or Aaron, somebody talked about, we just get to walk in and everybody lives here in Denver and Colorado Springs and Pueblo are all gone. You can go live wherever you want. You know, Aaron's going to go live in the Broadmoor on the golf course. You can go wherever you want. It's all yours. There's nobody around. Go take the best vineyard. Go get the best car. Where's the Porsche dealership at? That's what's happening. God gave them the land. He gave them the lands of the heathen, and they inherited the labor of the people. Why? That they might observe his statutes and keep his laws. Praise ye the Lord. God's constantly wanting the best. And when they got to Israel, the people, they were destroyed, and they got to take olive lands and vineyards and wineries that somebody else had dug. It's all there. Yours. Take it. Psalm 60. Joy and gladness. God took them out. Psalm 60, verse 4. Psalm 60, verse 4, we read, thou hast given a banner to them that fear thee. Gee, what is the Hebrew word for banner there? I wonder. It could very well be Nissi. God has given a banner to them that fear thee. God will be their protector. God will be over all. God has given them something to grab hold of that they can claim as theirs. It's God's football team, God's hockey team. It's God's. Getting ahead of myself. I'm going to tie that into Jesus Christ in a minute. Thou hast given a banner to them that fear thee. That it may be displayed because of the truth, that thy beloved may be delivered. Save with my right hand and hear me. This banner is given to them that have respect for God. This covering of God. Isaiah chapter 12. Verse 2. This banner, this insignia, this standard, this rallying cry, that's ours, is going to be based upon the root of Jesse in a minute. But Jehovah's given it to us. Isaiah 12:2. Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust. And because I can trust in God, I don't have to fear other nations. And that's why it said that in Exodus. I will trust and not be afraid, for the Lord Jehovah is my strength. The Lord Jehovah is my song. The Lord Jehovah is become my salvation today through the finished work of Christ. 11:10, Isaiah 11:10, on the column over, it says in 11:10, and in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign of the people. The root of Jesse is the Nissi, the banner, the ensign. It's the insignia. It's the rallying cry for all people today from then on, from Genesis 3:15 on. It's our team. We are now Jesus Christ men and women, a new creation. That's the greatest team of all times, the body of Christ, that we have today through the root of Jesse. The root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign to the people, to it even the Gentiles, which most of us were at one time, and the rest shall be glorious through the root of Jesse. The Messiah is set forth as the crucified and risen Savior, as the rallying point for all the earth, to be gathered to him, redeemed, given spirit, given the ministry of reconciliation and awaiting the gathering together, the fullness of what we're going to have in the future. We're waiting for the final work of the root of Jesse, our ensign, our insignia, our banner, our Nissi. And of course, we'll close where you probably thought I was going to close. Song of Solomon. All right, Psalm, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, chapter 2. Yeah, I understand what James went through. I had two perfect directions that I was taking this teaching, and it went totally 2 days ago, in a different direction. All right. After Ecclesiastes, we've got Song of Solomon. We're going to do chapter 2, verse 4. He brought me to the banqueting house. Literally, that means to the house of wine. So I know many of you have gone to the house of wine, the good kind of wine and the WHINE wine, but we don't want to go to that part. That's what happened to the children of Israel. He has brought me to the house of wine, and his Nissi, and his banner over me was love. And that is the bottom line. His banner over us today is still love. The love through the root of Jesse. The love of God, the love of Christ, the love of our neighbor, and even, God forbid, the love of our enemies. All part of the new nature that we have today. For this love is our rallying point to awaken mankind's hopes and efforts in order to stand for Jehovah, Elohim, El Shaddai, our Heavenly Father, in this day and time and hour. So that is our Jehovah. And in response to that, as I mention these names, if you who taught these would stand. So our Jehovah is our peace. Our Jehovah is our shepherd, even our German shepherd. Our Jehovah sees and provides. Our Jehovah is our righteous one. Our Jehovah is one who heals. Well, he already stood up. All right. And our Jehovah is present. He's there. He's even in Denver and helps on the way home. And he is our banner. I'll stand up. He is our rallying cry. He is everything for us today and forever. And he's got great things in store for us. What do we do? What the children of Israel should have done. Obey, listen, do the best we can, and tell others. So if all you guys would come up here, we've got a little something for everybody.